You don't need more motivation. You've had it in the form of guilt, regret, and shame. You've told yourself 1,000 times, tomorrow I'll be better. But tomorrow always comes without the change. Because discipline isn't a feeling. It doesn't come from mood, music, or momentum. It comes from a system, one that works even when you don't feel like it. So the real question is, what if 1 week, just 7 days, could rewire how you deal with yourself? 1. You wake up with a plan. You tell yourself, today's the day. No snoozing, no scrolling, no skipping that workout. But by the time the coffee's half cold, you're already off track. You didn't mean to quit. You just didn't follow through. And deep down, a quiet voice whispers the thing you don't want to admit. I can't trust myself anymore. That's the wound no one talks about. Not the missed goals, not the wasted hours, but the erosion of trust between who you say you are and how you act when no one's watching. You call it laziness. But what if it's not? What if you've just been using the wrong tool all along? We were sold a myth. That discipline is about forcing ourselves through pain. That the strong push harder, grind longer, punish themselves better. But that's not discipline. That's self-abuse wrapped in achievement. Real discipline, Stoic discipline, is quiet. It's structured, it's boring, it's built like a habit, not a heroic moment. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about conquering mountains. He wrote about rising early, about resisting impulses, about training the soul daily, like a soldier sharpens a blade. You must build up your life action by action, he said, and be satisfied if each one achieves its goal. So why do we fail? Because we wait to feel ready. We think discipline is something we need to feel inspired to do. But every time we wait for the perfect mood, the brain learns this pattern. Mood first, action later. And guess what? That mood rarely comes. And even when it does, it doesn't stay. So the cycle repeats. You delay, you feel guilty, you overpromise, you collapse again. And each time, your confidence dies a little more quietly than the last. This video isn't about hacks. It's not a motivational speech. It's a mirror. Because maybe you don't need to become more powerful. You just need to stop betraying yourself in small ways. And that starts now. For the next 7 days, you won't try to become a whole new person. You'll just do one thing differently each day. One small step to rebuild trust, restore clarity, and reclaim command over your impulses. You'll start by observing, then by choosing discomfort, then by saying no, fixing a habit, delaying gratification, training silently, until day 7 when you stop asking your feelings for permission. Because your identity will no longer be held hostage by your mood. This is the Stoic path. Not the loud kind, not the cinematic kind, but the kind that works. So forget the past. Forget all the times you gave up. You're not broken. You're just untrained. And this week, we train. Most people think discipline starts with effort, but the Stoics knew better. Before you can control yourself, you have to understand what exactly you're trying to control. And that begins with the impulse. That split-second reaction. The urge to check your phone. To avoid discomfort. To eat when bored. To lie when cornered. To procrastinate not because you're tired, but because you're afraid. These moments aren't just bad habits. They're reflexes. Unconscious patterns you've repeated so many times. They feel like you. But they're not. You are not the urge. You are the observer of the urge. And day 1 is about stepping into that role, not to fix anything, not to fight, just to see. Because what you don't see, you can't change. And what you judge, you can't understand. Marcus Aurelius wrote, You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. But that power only begins once you recognize your patterns without guilt, without shame, without rushing to fix. Think about today like standing in front of a mirror, not to criticize your reflection, but to learn what's really there. So here's your task. As you move through the day, simply notice your impulses. That's it. Every time you reach for something you didn't plan, pause. Every time you avoid something meaningful, pause. Every time you find yourself reacting emotionally, escaping into noise, chasing distraction, pause. And say silently, "This is an impulse. I am not the impulse." That moment of naming is everything. It interrupts the cycle. It gives you a sliver of space, and in that space, freedom begins. Don't try to stop the impulse. Don't shame yourself for feeling it. That's old programming. Today, your only job is to become familiar with yourself. To map the terrain of your mind like a Stoic cartographer. No judgment, just clarity. And clarity is the first true act of discipline, because most people skip this step. They try to overpower their impulses without understanding them and burn out. They mistake force for freedom and collapse. But you won't. You're not here to wrestle your mind into submission. You're here to study it, patiently, like a warrior sharpening his blade in silence before battle. No one will see the work you do today. There will be no praise, no checklist, just the quiet act of observation. But don't underestimate it, because the moment you start watching your impulses, they stop running the show, and something deeper wakes up in you, something still, aware, in control. By the end of day one, you won't be more motivated, but you'll be more awake, and that is the true beginning of discipline. You've probably felt this before. The first day, you're committed. You feel clear, focused, maybe even powerful. But by day 3, something shifts. The voice in your head starts whispering again. You've done enough. Take it easy. You can get back on track tomorrow. And just like that, you collapse into the same old pattern. It's not because you're lazy. It's because your brain is wired to avoid pain, especially unfamiliar pain. But here's the paradox. If you always avoid discomfort, you train your nervous system to equate comfort with safety. And every time you try to grow, to break a pattern, to step into discomfort, your body triggers an alarm. Not because it's dangerous, but because it's different. That's why day 2 matters so much. Because today, you're not reacting to discomfort. You're choosing it. You're reclaiming it as a form of training. The Stoics didn't just tolerate pain. They invited it. Seneca said, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" He wasn't being dramatic. He was inoculating himself against fear, against fragility, against the illusion that comfort is security. So here's your discipline for day 2. Choose one voluntary discomfort. Small, controlled, but intentional. Maybe it's skipping sugar for the day. Maybe it's taking a cold shower. Maybe it's walking instead of driving. Maybe it's sitting in silence without checking your phone. Maybe it's saying no to something convenient and saying yes to something hard. It doesn't matter what it is. What matters is why you're doing it. You're sending a message to your nervous system. I don't need to feel good to do what's good. You're detaching from the addiction to ease. And here's the real shift. It's not supposed to feel heroic. It's supposed to feel slightly annoying, mildly frustrating, maybe even stupid. Good. That means it's working. Discomfort sharpens awareness. It exposes where the edges are. And discipline is built by living on those edges, not by staying inside the padded walls of routine. You're not punishing yourself. You're building psychological resilience. The first time you feel that craving to quit, that desire to treat yourself, that moment of "I deserve better," pause and ask, what if this is better? What if every time you choose the hard thing, you're building a version of yourself that doesn't flinch? Not louder, not tougher, just steadier. Discomfort is a forge, but you don't have to throw yourself into the fire. Just light a small flame and stand near it. By the end of today, you'll know something most people avoid their whole life: that you can choose challenge and survive it, even grow from it. That's discipline. Not screaming through pain, but walking straight into it with your eyes open. By day 3, the challenge shifts from inner awareness to outer resistance. Not resistance from the world, but from yourself. That part of you that still wants to be liked. That still equates no with rejection and boundaries with betrayal. Saying no shouldn't feel like a moral failure, but for most of us, it does. You hesitate. You soften your tone. You script a polite excuse in your mind before you've even spoken. You imagine their disappointment, their judgment, and you cave. Not because you want to, but because you don't want to be seen as selfish. And every time you do this, something small in you contracts. You give away a piece of clarity, a piece of peace, just to avoid temporary discomfort. But peace that costs your integrity isn't peace. It's compliance. And compliance, over time, breeds resentment. The Stoics understood this. They weren't cold. They were clear. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it." That kind of clarity cuts. Not with cruelty, but with precision. Day 3 is about drawing that kind of line. Not to keep others out, but to keep yourself from dissolving in every room you enter. Because here's what most people miss. Discipline isn't just about doing hard things. It's about refusing the wrong things without guilt, without apology, without delay. So here's your task today. Say no once, clearly, calmly, without performance. Someone might want your time. Someone might push your energy into their agenda. Someone might expect you to say yes, as you always have. But today, you don't. You simply say, "That won't work for me," or "I'm not available for that," or simply, "Number," and you stop there. You let the silence carry the weight. You let the moment feel awkward and you don't fill it. Because this moment isn't about comfort. It's about ownership. When you say no without explaining yourself, you reclaim your voice. You stop overcompensating for other people's reactions. You stop pre-apologizing for existing. And here's the paradox. The people who truly respect you won't need a reason. And the ones who demand an explanation were never listening anyway. This isn't about being rigid. It's about being real. It's about refusing to bend so far that you forget you have a spine. Because every yes you give out of guilt is a no to yourself. Every time you smooth your edges to fit into someone else's life, you lose your shape. So say no today, not to prove anything, but to remind yourself that you're allowed to choose. You're allowed to protect your time. You're allowed to disappoint others. You're allowed to be a person with limits. Limits don't make you selfish. They make you sovereign. And when you practice this discipline, even just once, you'll feel something shift. Not power over someone else, but power over the part of you that always surrendered too soon. This is what Stoic strength looks like. Not loud, not forceful, just quietly, unshakably firm. Day 4 isn't about doing more, It's about building something stable, something that holds when motivation fades. By now, you may feel the weight of trying, of choosing discomfort, of saying no. Discipline is beginning to stretch you. And a part of you, maybe the same part that begged for change just days ago, is starting to whisper, "Is this how it's going to be? Always hard?" This is where many give up. Not because the goal is too big, but because the system they're using is too wide, too scattered, too fragile. They try to do everything at once. Wake up early, eat clean, work out, journal, meditate, be present, be perfect. And very quickly, they burn out. Here's what the Stoics knew, and what modern hustle culture forgot. The foundation of discipline isn't more effort, it's focus. So today's task is not about doing more. It's about doing one thing deliberately, repeatedly, without exception. We call this an anchor routine. A habit so simple, so steady, that it becomes the spine of your day. It's not the most impressive thing. It's the most reliable thing. Maybe it's 5 minutes of morning silence. Maybe it's journaling before bed. Maybe it's walking for 15 minutes without a phone. Maybe it's writing down 3 intentions before your day begins. You choose, but choose only one. And here's the discipline. You do it no matter how you feel. No matter how busy, tired, bored, or unmotivated. This is your anchor, your stabilizer, your declaration to your nervous system, "This is who I am, regardless of the storm." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "At every hour, give your full concentration. Do what's in front of you with precise and genuine seriousness. Not everything, just what's in front of you. With presence, with respect, without drama." But here's where it gets real. Most people resist this practice because it feels small, underwhelming, unworthy of the discipline they think they should be demonstrating. So they chase intensity instead of consistency. They chase novelty instead of structure. And they wonder why discipline feels like punishment instead of liberation. But you're doing something wiser. You're teaching your body that discipline can be gentle, predictable, even peaceful. That it's not a whip, it's a rhythm. Not a demand, but a design. Let that one act become sacred, because when everything else falls apart, it will hold. And you'll realize something strange. That small thing you thought didn't matter becomes the doorway to everything else. Your anchor routine isn't about productivity. It's about proof. Proof that you can show up, even when it's boring, even when no one's watching, even when you don't feel like it. And that kind of self-trust, that's rare. That's power. That's discipline in its most humble and enduring form. So today, don't aim higher. Aim narrower. Build a base so strong that you can stand taller tomorrow without shaking. You've been consistent for a few days now. You've resisted some impulses. You've built a small anchor habit. And for the first time in a long time, something inside you feels steady. Then it happens. That voice. You've earned it. Take the day off. Just one little treat won't hurt. And maybe it won't. But it's not about the cookie, the scroll, the skipped task. It's about who's making the call. Is it the version of you that's awake, present, grounded? Or is it the reflex? The one that always looks for the quick hit, the easy out, the cheap relief? This is the trap of day 5. Not failure, but false reward. Because what most people call self-care is often just well-disguised self-sabotage. And the worst part, you don't even see it. Because it looks kind. It sounds reasonable. It feels deserved. But discipline isn't about denying pleasure. It's about delaying it on your terms. Epictetus said, Freedom is the power to control your own response. And that includes your response to temptation, not by rejecting it outright, but by relating to it differently. So here's today's discipline. Pick one thing you crave, a habit, a pleasure, a routine escape, and don't eliminate it. Just delay it. Maybe you usually grab your phone right when you wake up. Today, wait 30 minutes. Maybe you snack late at night. Today, move it to after a walk. Maybe you scroll endlessly after work. Today, you scroll, but only after journaling. The point isn't abstinence. It's authorship. It's training your nervous system to decouple reward from reaction. Because when you delay gratification, you tell your brain, "I'm not controlled by the itch." You remind your body that pleasure doesn't own you, that it follows your choice, not the other way around. And something powerful happens when you do this. The craving doesn't disappear, but it weakens. It stops shouting and starts whispering. And in that quieter space, you can hear something else. The voice that says, "I don't need this right now. I'm okay just being here." That's not deprivation. That's freedom. Because you're no longer chasing every spark of stimulation. You're not filling boredom with noise. You're learning to be with yourself. And that is terrifying, until it becomes sacred. Most people think discipline shrinks your life. But the truth is, impulse does. Impulse narrows your world to the next click, the next bite, the next distraction. Discipline widens it again. It gives you back your time, your clarity, your agency. So, today, don't cancel your pleasure. Just move it. Shift it. Choose when and how you engage. And in that small shift, you'll find something big. That you're not depriving yourself. You're redefining yourself. Not as someone who never slips, but as someone who always chooses when to rise. By now, on day 6, the noise has started to fade, and what's left is just you and your effort. No cheerleaders, no novelty, no rush of momentum, just the quiet truth. You're either going to keep showing up or not. And something strange happens here. The part of you that once needed a crowd, it starts to feel unnecessary, excessive, even distracting. You realize that much of your past effort wasn't really for yourself. It was for display, for validation, for the small emotional paycheck of being seen trying. That's why most people post their progress before they've even made any. That's why they tell everyone what they're going to do before they've done anything. Because deep down, they're hoping that attention will replace action. But Stoic discipline rejects that trade. It doesn't perform. It practices. Marcus Aurelius never posted his morning routines. He wrote to himself, to sharpen, to center, to remember. And now, so do you. This is what day 6 asks of you. To do something hard and let it belong to no one but yourself. No updates, no stories, no quiet flexes masked as honesty. Just you, moving forward in silence. And that silence is the training. Because when you no longer need to be seen, you stop waiting for the world to confirm your effort. You stop needing motivation to act. You stop checking whether it feels right. You just do it. Not because you're forcing yourself, but because it's who you are becoming. And that is power. Not the kind that roars, the kind that endures. There's a deep kind of confidence that forms in private. When you meet resistance and respond not with a post, but with a choice. Not with a quote, but with repetition. Not with noise, but with action. It will feel uncomfortable. You'll reach for your phone. You'll want someone to know how disciplined you're being. Pause. Don't post it. Don't narrate it. Don't share it. Just feel it. Do it. Keep it. Because in that restraint, You are reclaiming your dignity. You are remembering that your journey is not a performance. It is not a story for others to consume. It is a covenant between you and the person you're becoming. And the fewer people that witness it, the stronger it becomes. This is not about being secretive. It's about being sovereign. And this, more than anything, is the essence of Stoic strength. To move quietly, to grow steadily, to transform without needing applause. So take one action today, difficult, focused, disciplined, and let no one know about it. Let it echo only within you. Let it be a silent bond you don't have to prove. And when the doubt comes, when the craving for attention tries to claw back in, remind yourself, I'm not doing this to be seen. I'm doing this to see myself. You've made it to day 7. Not perfectly, not without resistance, but you're still here. And that matters more than you think, because most people never make it this far. Not because it's too hard, but because it's too quiet. There's no applause for quiet consistency. No dopamine hit for showing up without drama. Just this. You and the mirror. And for the first time, the reflection is clearer. Not flawless. Not glowing. But honest. You're no longer asking, how do I feel today? You're asking, what do I do, regardless? That shift from mood to movement, that is the birth of discipline. The Stoics never promised you'd feel amazing every day. They promised something better, that you could be stable even when life isn't, that you could act rightly, even when your emotions scream otherwise. Because when identity is tied to mood, your sense of self becomes fragile. It rises and falls with every feeling. You say, I'm the kind of person who works hard until you're tired. I'm disciplined until it rains. I'm focused until you get bored. But identity rooted in action, that's different. It says, no matter what I feel, I train. No matter what I fear, I move. No matter what shakes I hold. That's what day 7 is for. Today, you go back to one of the hardest actions from earlier this week. Maybe it was observing your impulses. Maybe it was the cold shower. Maybe it was saying no or delaying gratification. But this time, you don't think about it. You don't hype it. You just do it like brushing your teeth, like locking your door, like breathing. Because now, it's not something you're trying. It's something you are. You don't need motivation. You've built momentum. You don't need to feel like it. You've become someone who does it anyway. This is what the mirror shows you now. Not a hero, not a machine, but a human aligned. Someone who no longer runs from effort. Someone who no longer negotiates with discomfort. Someone who has stopped asking for permission to act. And there's something sacred about that. Because most of your life, you were taught to react, to wait until it felt right, to wait until someone else approved, to wait until conditions were perfect. But now, you act, not impulsively, not aggressively, but intentionally, like a Stoic, steady, silent, sure. So today, you close the loop, not by celebrating, not by posting a win, but by doing the work one last time without asking your feelings for consent. This is the final cut in the sculpture, the last stroke that makes the form clear. And when you walk past the mirror tonight, you'll see it. The reflection won't smile, it won't glow, but it will look back at you without flinching, because this time you recognize who you are. Not because of how you feel, but because of what you've done. 7 days ago, you thought you needed motivation, a spark, a push, a feeling. But look at what you've done. You didn't wait to feel ready. You didn't need to be perfect. You just needed a system, a simple, quiet rhythm of watching your mind, choosing discomfort, saying no, doing less but doing it well, delaying gratification, training in silence, and anchoring yourself to action, not emotion. No hacks, no hype, just one small decision after another until something changed. Not the world, not your schedule, not your mood. You. That's what discipline really is. It's not a power you summon in heroic moments. It's a relationship you build with yourself in the moments no one sees. It's waking up and doing the thing again. It's resisting the easy way out again. It's keeping your promise not to others, but to the version of you that's watching silently inside. And now, that version is stronger. You don't flinch the same way. You don't argue with discomfort the same way. You don't negotiate your effort with your emotions the same way. Because now you know, discipline is not a feeling. It's a system. And systems don't care if you're tired. They don't collapse when you're uninspired. They move slowly, surely, endlessly because they're built to. You've just spent 7 days becoming that system. And if it feels underwhelming, even anticlimactic, that's a good sign. Because real change doesn't feel cinematic. It feels calm, clear, almost boring. But in that quiet, there's a new kind of power. The power of knowing, I do what I said I'd do, no matter what. You didn't just learn discipline this week. You became someone who practices it not occasionally, but consistently. And that's not something you lose. That's something you return to every day, like a home. And when the next storm comes, and it will, you won't panic. You won't break. You'll return to the rhythm. One small action, one steady breath, one quiet victory. And that is freedom. If something in this video made you stop and reflect, hit subscribe to continue this journey and leave a comment if you feel like sharing what spoke to you. Not because we need the numbers, but because you're not the only one walking this path. And sometimes, knowing that is what helps us keep going one disciplined step at a time.